Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very senior Air Force officer, Air Marshal Anil Khosla from Bangalore, India. Air Marshal Khosla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure interacting with you.
Thank you. Air Marshal Khosla was the former Vice Chief of Air Staff of the Indian Air Force. He is a Param Vishish Seva Medal and Ati Vishish Seva Medal and Vayu Sena Medal. And for those of you who don't know, these awards are given by the President of India. He's handled the Doklam operations with China and Balakot Airstrike against Pakistan. And he's served in all the important commands of the Indian Air Force. What an amazing journey you've had, Air Marshal. So let me start by asking you, from a young airman or a young cadet to the Vice Chief of Air Staff, what did you do right in your journey to the top?
Yeah, if you want me to say it in one word, it is hard work, and hard work.
I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So actually, very often repeated sentence when I keep telling my children also is, whenever they start creeping about life or something, I always say, and who's told you that the life will be easy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so hard work basically. And secondly, there are three more things which I always went one step beyond normal. I mean, whenever I thought I've finished working on a project or whatever I'm doing, I just took one more step. And in senior ranks, as I grew in service, one more thing I followed was always thought long term. So if there is a choice between a decision which would give short term results or long term, I went for the long terms. And of course, basics of honesty and sincerity and dedication to the work that always goes with it.
Correct. And in this journey to the top, what have been some of your key learnings and some of your key challenges?
Yeah. So learning, as I said, there's no substitute to hard work. I mean, if you need something, you need to go and grab it and you need to work towards it. And second thing I learned during my service career and which pays me still dividends is the self-discipline. Doing the correct thing when nobody is watching you. That is very, very important. And along with it, a very, very strong maybe willpower. And what other thing I learned during my service career is, especially in flying and handling these activities, is the time management. Time is short and you have to do multiple things. So you have to manage it very well. And most important thing which I learned in service is, project management or even disaster management, the reactions to it, the planning, the execution, the monitoring, the review process. I mean, that really holds me in good stead in subsequent activities as well.
How fascinating. And a question that I've often asked a lot of senior leaders like you is, what do you think is your leadership style?
What happens is, defense services, the leadership is a bit peculiar or different from the others. And each service, Army, Navy, or the Air Force, has got its own peculiarity as far as leadership aspects are concerned. Basically, leadership is divided between two. That is, generally, when we talk about services, one is autocratic and one is democratic. And I'll not go into a lecture or details about it. But my style of leadership which is situational. I mean, at times autocratic, at times democratic. Democratic means you take the team along and this thing. Second thing is, most important thing about leadership, which I've learned, is that as a leader, you're an open book. Everyone is looking at you. So the dictum followed is do as I do. And, because you have to lead by example. But let me take 30 seconds more. And, the style of leadership is changing actually.
Okay.
The new generation coming in, the leadership style is changing. Little bit requirement is to change from tell type to cell type. These are a few aspects related to leadership which I encountered or followed in my service career.
Very interesting. I never heard this phrase from tell type to cell type, and you're probably right.
Yeah.
The millennials and the Gen Z cadets or officers coming in have a very different outlook, and they're the same all over the world.
Absolutely. So this new generation which is coming up are very much aware. Actually, information is at their fingertips.
Correct.
So what I'm trying to say is the tell type to cell type, like in generally Army or the defense services, is a tell type. Saab ka hukum hai. And rightly so, it is required also at certain
Correct.
situations, in warlike situations.
Hmm.
But what is happening with the new generation coming in and their awareness level? If you employ cell type is that you give them the orders and also a little bit of explanation why it is being done.
Hmm.
And you find their understanding is there, and their involvement is much higher than if it is just cell type.
Hmm. Very interesting. So now I'm going to move on further, sir. You handled, the Balakot strike, etc. Now, I'm not sure if you are at liberty to talk about it, and if you're not, just say, and we'll skip this question. But as the son of a Fauji, whenever people debate this, it angers me when people say, "How do we know this is true or not?"
Mm-hmm.
If you can share, I'd love to get your perspective on what actually happened.
Yeah, so actually, I can share a few things with you and a few things I can't, as you
Fair
said.
enough. Yes.
And
Yes.
a lot of things came out after the Balakot,
Correct.
the media trial, as you say, happened, and what of narratives came out, and that is besides the point. This is an info warfare era.
Absolutely.
Well, Balakot, it was very straightforward. It was the first time that the government of India decided to use air power.
Right.
Before I start, let me tell you an interesting thing. All these years, in the West and other places of the world, it is thought that uh, air power use is there for all sort of situations, the Air Force use.
Correct.
But if you have boots on ground, like army going into it is considered invasion. In our
Hmm.
case, it was other way around.
Hmm.
Army keeps doing actions and all that. And in case Air Force is used, it was considered escalatory.
Okay.
Somehow that
Right.
fear had, was taken away. And this time the government decided to use the air power as a means for conveying a message. And it was a very well planned and executed
Right.
operation. On 26,
Right.
the target chosen was very straightforward. The message was very straightforward. That we have got no grievances against the locals or the citizens of Pakistan.
Hmm.
It is against the terrorists. It is against the terrorist organization. It is against the perpetuators of terrorism. It is against the people who support them. The ISI, the Pakistan Army,
Hmm.
and that is why if you see the target chosen was very very well thought of. It was a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist camp,
Hmm.
which was isolated on a hilltop. There was no collateral damage likely to be there.
Hmm.
So the message was very clear. And two things let me tell you about the planning and execution.
Hmm.
One was secrecy was maintained, need to know basis. You will be surprised to know in a red quarter about four or five people knew that what is going on.
Wow.
I mean, it was that. And second thing was, all the other activities they continued as normal. So that is how we were able to, even in spite of knowing that something is cooking and something will happen,
Hmm.
surprise was achieved. So it was a well executed, planned, and executed this thing, and it went also copybook. Of course, one or failures were there, but then in the planning process, those failures are catered for actually.
Correct. Correct.
That is what all the
Very
Balakot,
well,
and
sir. And
to my mind,
I
it
think
yielded the correct results.
the whole country is proud of what you did that. So that's amazing. But moving on, sir, now I'd love to get your perspectives on technology. Over the years, technology has made deep inroads into all our defense services.
Correct.
I'd love to get your perspective on how this has changed from the perspective of aircraft and missiles and drones and space and cyberspace. These are all areas which are under your or would have been under your direct domain.
You're very right. Actually, technology effect on aircraft, surface to missiles, drones, and space cyber. I mean, all five you can go on for hours.
Right.
And rightly speaking, and what happens before I give my views, the Air Force or the air power use of air power or the Air Force, like they say, you can walk on or run on ground without technology. You can even swim on in water without technology, but you cannot fly in the air without technology.
Absolutely.
So what I'm getting at is that the Air Force is a very, very technology intensive service.
True.
Okay, that is one. And secondly, if you notice, within 120 years of the first flight, Wright brothers, within few years, a different service was born. That is the Air Force. And within these 100 years, where have we reached? I mean, technology-wise, as far as the platforms are concerned, networking is concerned, the weapons are concerned, the avionics are concerned, the electronic warfare aspects are concerned. I mean, we have really moved ahead. And still, the practitioners of air power also have not realized the full potential of the air power or the actually aerospace power we are going into. You mentioned space also. And technology has got a big role in it. And the aircraft we are talking about, fifth generation, sixth generation, they're packed with computing power. They have survivability equipment, which is heavy electronics, and you have standoff capability, wise precision capability, and I mean, you name it, it is there. They're talking about smart skins, where when you're looking at the aircraft from below, it merges with the sky, and if you're looking from top, it merges with the ground. I mean, that sort of stealth technology they're talking about. I mean, you can go on and on. Missiles, if you take, long distance, precision, ability to take multiple target, ability to take special targets, hypersonics coming in. That changes the whole ambit of warfare. Beyond visual range missiles. Okay, then drones technology, swarm technology. I mean, multiple types of and capability, various capability-based unmanned platforms, and not only in the domain of air, in the domain even underground, in the underwater platforms. I mean, they are coming, and the new concept of warfare which is coming up as far as drone technology is concerned. One is the swarm. You have hundreds of thousands of small drones, and which have a common task, and they work in networked environment in your region and carry out the task. And new concept also is coming up, led by a manned fighter or a manned platform, and it's called wingman concept. I call it mother goose concept.
Okay,
that
very interesting.
Yeah,
and yet,
cyber, yeah.
I'm going to ask you the same thing, but on space, and then I'll come to cyberspace.
Okay.
President Trump spoke about setting up a space force, and I think in India also there is a discussion to start something on have a force that's going to be managed in space. Do you see space becoming the next frontier for war?
Not becoming. I would say it has already become.
Already become, okay.
Yeah. See, space, why I'm saying that is, I'll qualify it. See, one is, earlier the space utility was in two ways. One is, satellites for communications, for navigation, and these sort of jobs, for ISR, eyes in the sky. And now they're in every aspect of life. I mean, civilian use, as well as every aspect of air warfare. Second is earlier the weapons, ballistic missiles and all used to go through the medium of space and then strike. So these were limited. Now what is happening is, unfortunately, of whatever you call it, I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry that we should not weaponize the space, but it is bound to happen. And it has happened already. A lot of countries have displayed anti-satellite weapons, where you can have a hard kill, you can capture a satellite, enemy satellite, or you can destroy it by physical means, or even by soft kill, electronic warfare means. And the effect on the country, victim country, or whatever you call it, will be tremendous, because you're reliant on networking, which are all satellite-based communications. Your targeting is all through satellite-based this thing. Your ISR is totally, you're actually, the ISR is really the eyes in the sky. You're really standing absolutely there. I mean, everyone can see what you're doing.
Correct.
So the effect of space warfare is already there. Only thing is, it will go more and more. With this hypersonics coming in, a new dimension is being added to it.
Very interesting. And then is the other part, which is cyberspace. Cyberspace, again, we've been seeing a lot of attacks taking place on different government institutions around the world. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Ashutosh, if you notice, in earlier days, the warfare used to be in three domains: land, sea, and air. Correct? Army, Navy, Air Force.
Yes.
Now it is almost multi-domain, 7 odd domains. Space and cyber has been added. Electronic warfare has been added. Information warfare has been added. I mean, these are all domains, this thing. Yeah. And some of these domains like space, cyber, information, what is happening is, it's not only wartime. It's even in peacetime. We call it gray zone operations. So the line which is between the war and peace is blurring. So you may be hostile to one country, that relations may not be good. Even where the relations are neutral, gray zone operations could continue. So cyber domain, which is there, what is happening is, it is a fertile ground for these sort of gray zone operations, where even in peacetime, the activity goes on. And what these activities go on is, one is, trying to fish for intelligence through the cyber domain, one. Second is developing your offensive capability and keeping it ready, so that cyber warfare, when it is required, you deny the enemy the use of cyber domain. So that goes on in the peacetime. Third is, we are reliant totally on networks now. Can you imagine, all our banking sector, railways, traffic management, I mean, you name it. You name a field in the civil use, there are all networked operations.
Correct.
Imagine now if that network is denied in the time of, there'll be chaos. And in that, prevailing chaos, the enemy is likely to attack and take subsequent actions and take the war into kinetic field. So cyberspace activity starts from the peace, and as the things heat up, it increases. And the opening salvo is always, like you see, even in the Ukraine war, the opening salvo was through the cyber activity.
That's true.
Then getting into the higher scales of
very amazing, very, very amazing. So I've got one more question that I wanted to ask you about the technology part, and then I'll move to China. There's been a lot of news about aircrafts being landed on expressways. And, many people have asked me that, why is it talked about so much? What's the big deal?
It's a big deal, yeah. True.
So I want to get from you, what is the strategic advantage of creating highways where you can actually land such a large transport plane?
See, if you allow me, I will take 30 seconds to go back slightly into history
of
past.
Of course.
See, in the earlier days, World War time, I'm talking about 1 and 2, it was a war of mass. Mass means you must have thousands of aircraft being, taken across somewhere. So you had multiple airfields, smaller airfields, because the takeoff run required was very less.
Correct.
So maybe a kilometer or a kilometer and a half, and multiple within a area of say 25, 30 kilometers, there would be 5 or 6 airfields who could host hundreds of aircraft, and combined the whole node could have thousands of aircraft transiting through. Now, as the technology developed, you mentioned technology, the aircraft became bigger, the landing run became bigger, the runways became 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, and the number of runways stopped. Secondly, due to long range vectors, the airfields were located deep inside own territory. Correct. So this is what happened historically. Now, coming to the present, what is happening is, if you see, all the wars which are started are with the long range vectors. When I say long range vectors, I talk about missiles which are either fired from the ships or fired from the ground or fired from the air, but ranges varying from few hundred kilometers to 1,000 kilometers. And opening salvo is always with these long range vectors. Now, so opening salvo, if the enemy is capable and he's got, so you have to protect your assets. So how do you protect your assets? One is, you have a protective infrastructure like hardened aircraft shelters and things like that. And second is the good old, theory, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
True.
So we are gone one complete circle. We have come back to a situation where we need more operating surfaces.
Correct.
So what you do is, best ideal is you're making runways. Now India has got an advantage. The highways are coming up, every day new highways are being added.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of work on this. So old highways, which we identified few areas which had a straight run and maybe a little bit of reorientation, and you have a ready-made runway available. And the new ones we identified in consultation with the Highway Authority of India that this is the route going to be. And we identified areas where we can have a straight stretch and a sort of a alternate runway available, ready-made. Now, coming to this next part of it, this is as far as war is concerned, or pre-war, you can have dispersed these aircraft. Idea is to give more number of targets to the enemy and make his life difficult and keep the assets available. There's one more angle to it before I finish off. You have HADR situation, human assistance during disaster relief, correct?
Right.
Humanitarian assistance during disaster relief. These highways as runways will be a big help in case there is a disaster, there's a flood situation, there is a this thing. The aircraft can land with the relief material and it can be dispersed into these areas. Come to think of it. I mean, very interesting and useful purpose.
Yeah, well said. Both tactical as well as relief. I mean, I hadn't thought of these things, but thank you, sir. So I'm now going to move to our current favorite neighbor, which is China. I'd love to get your thoughts. And I've been personally, as a business or an entrepreneur, to China at least 70 or 80 times over the last 20 years. But I'd love to get your perspective on what are the challenges China represents for India.
So, let me tell you, I'm pursuing PhD on China.
Oh, wow.
My topic is, how does China's brain work? What are the factors which influence their decision making as far as military is concerned or diplomacy is concerned? So those are the areas of interest. And I've been following China for quite some time. And luckily, my last 5 appointments were dealing with China in some form or the other. I was Director General Air Operations or Vice Chief or CNC in command, where I was dealing directly with China. Okay, so China is a challenge. what is happening is China is in the race with USA.
Correct.
And the aim is very straightforward. You know that by 2049, they want a world-class this thing. They want to be world number one.
Correct.
Creation is that. They want that old glory back, the golden days. They look at the world like a cone, they are in the center and at the apex. That's where they want to reach. Now, in this race with the USA, they are, pulling ahead of us at a very fast pace in every way. Modernizing their defense forces, Army, Navy, Air Force in a very focused manner. They are building up their capability. They're building up their capacity. Their defense industry is good. And they are really racing ahead of us in the whole process. That is fine with us. But what is happening is, at the same time, their attitude towards us is also becoming more and more aggressive or a belligerent. That is not a good news.
Correct.
Now, what happens is, India is the only country they have not resolved our disputes or the border disputes. Okay, and that is one. So, and they keep following the policy of, you heard these very often statement, two statement, string of pearls, where they're developing countries around us. And second is, salami slicing. So every 2 years, 3 years, Doklam, Galwan, they keep doing these actions, and in the process, keep munching or keep salami slicing few parts of the terrain and things like that. So they keep the pot boiling. I call it pressure. I have called it pressure cooker theory.
Okay.
They put on the pressure cooker on the fire and they control the pressure in such a way that it doesn't get into a war-like situation. And if it gets too hot, they reduce the flame or reduce the pressure. And they keep this pot boiling. So that is what pressure cooker theory I call it.
Very interesting.
Now, what is happening is, with this sort of attitude, you need to be prepared against it. So time has come where we need to spend more money on our defense preparedness and capability. Unfortunately, even if it at the cost of bread and butter and development.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And how equipped are we? And I'm going to just draw a parallel from 1962 because my father was in the 1962 war. And I remember him telling me that they didn't even have proper shoes. But how equipped are we today as compared to what we were in 1962 when we last clashed with China?
See, 1962 and now we have come a very, very long way.
Right.
1962 was just after independence from 47. We had already fought, wars with Pakistan and China. They were already down 2-3 wars and all. And secondly, our economy was not doing so well. Our industry was just being in the process of setting up and all. Overall, our cumulative national power was not very high as such. And you're right, that time we were very ill prepared. We didn't even have the proper clothing to deal with high altitude and things like that. But we have come a long way now. We have made a mark. When I say we, India, India has made a mark on the world map. People know where India is now, and they talk about it. And similarly, economically we have improved. And obviously, when you improve economically, the overflow goes into all the other aspects. So defense is also gained. And especially in Air Force, I can tell you, I've seen Air Force for 63 years. My dad was also in the Air Force. And 40 years very closely while being in the Air Force. In these 40 years of my service career, I've seen 2 or 3 major waves of changes coming in. When I say waves of changes, in terms of our capability, in terms of our capacity to, fight or whatever in case it is thrust upon us. So our deterrence value has gone up. Our capabilities in terms of precision, in terms of good platforms, in terms of reach, in terms of specialized weapons, in terms of air-to-air refueling, in terms of combat support aircraft. I mean, you name it, we have gone up. But the thing is, your capability always has to match the enemy. Unfortunately, what is happening is, China, as I said, is racing ahead. The second factor, which I didn't talk about earlier, is the collusivity between China and Pakistan. So with this collusivity, what happens is the factor gets multiplied. So we need to do much more than what we are doing now.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So I'm now going to move to our other neighbor on our west, which is Pakistan.
Okay.
From whatever I see of Pakistan, and I've been there 3-4 times, it's a nation in turmoil. It's even a stage where when I go for international conferences, I've actually experienced that there would be Pakistanis walking in front of me. And if a Westerner asked them, where are you from? I would overhear them say, we're from India. I mean, they wouldn't even, they didn't want to say they're from Pakistan to anyone else. I'd love to get your thoughts, sir, on our neighbor and what is happening there, and what do you see as the future?
Actually, before I answer your question, you triggered a thought. Even in the Ukraine crisis, one of the media reports came that the Pakistani students, they used Indian flag
Correct.
out of Ukraine.
Correct.
So you're very right what you said. No, Pakistan is an irritant. Okay. Yeah, obviously it's a country you know better.
Yeah.
The state of economy is in doldrums.
Correct.
I call it, it follows credit card economy. So it has these multiple credit cards,
Yes.
one American, one from Islamic countries, one from Saudi Arabia, one from China. So he takes credit from one, pays the other chap. So I call it credit card again, economy.
Absolutely.
So it's basically an irritant. Now the only thing is the army rules the roost there. Okay, and the reason tear of the army there, Pakistan army, is anti-India feeling. Hey, anti-India feeling finishes, the army value will go down. I mean, they'll have no reason to spend so much of money on their defense forces and army. So the anti-India feeling, and while they are in the chair, while they are in the control, will going to continue. The irritant is going to continue. Secondly, now this collusivity which has come with the China, and it serves both the purpose. Actually, you know, they call it their friendship deeper than the sea, stronger than steel, and blood relations. I don't know what all. Actually, it's a marriage of convenience.
Absolutely.
As for me, it's a marriage of convenience. So it suits both the sides, but it's a problem for us. So that is the issue. Now, Pakistan, capability-wise, he's also got similar capabilities what we have, but capacity-wise, that means capacity to wage war is very lacking. And you see Balakot also, after that also, they were not ready to escalate or not ready to fight. They don't want to get into a war-like situation, and they learned the lesson the hard way. Whatever wars they fought, they thought they were able to achieve something, but they're not been able to. Now what they're following was, 1,000 cuts, lead by 1,000 cuts, the terrorist activities and all. So now, present situations, Touchwood slightly is under control as far as terrorism is concerned. I mean, up to a certain threshold. But this collusivity between China and Pakistan is going to continue, and that is the irritant for us will continue in future.
Amazing. So I've got time for two more questions, sir. My next question to you is that it has often been said that a Pakistani soldier fights for his religion.
Yeah.
A Chinese soldier fights for his party.
Right.
And an Indian soldier fights for his motherland.
True.
I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So actually, nobody talks about, whenever we talk about, military power, say military power, I'll not talk about national power. National power has got everything. I'll talk about military power. Generally people do bean counting. He's got so many tanks, he's got so many armored personnel carriers, so many fighters, so many combat support aircraft, so many ships of this class, so many ships of that class, correct? But there is one factor which always gets missed out. I keep hearing my youngsters in service used to make fun of me, sir. You always give this example that, in a boxing match or in a wrestling match, you may see a 6-footer full of muscles and all that. But he may be a pipsqueak mentally.
Correct.
Okay. And whereas there might be a short chap, very meek looking, but he may be full of beans because it's a mind factor. So the factor which comes in is, as far as mind factor is concerned, also added with that is the tactics and the training and the motivation. So these are the three things: motivation, training, and tactics.
Correct.
So Indian soldiers are battle hardened. Number one. They have seen action in all sort of places, all sort of this thing. Secondly, that whatever you call it, we have that nationalistic feeling.
Correct.
That somebody we consider the country as a mother. That is why it's called Mother India. So the moment, and soldiers are trained in such a way where the izzat, they say, salt, we had salt of this country or salt of an army or the salt of the unit. So they take it that way. If you attack my unit, or if you attack my army, or if you attack my country, you're attacking me directly. They take it in that spirit.
Okay.
And that is very important. That is why they're ready to die.
Absolutely.
For the country. And, leadership is, in army, they say that leadership, army is different. You don't have to die for the country. You have to motivate the other chap to go and even fight till the death. So that sort of leadership is required. But what I'm getting at is that we are quite well off in this matter of motivation, matter of a training, and matter of a tactics.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, sir, is that what do you see as the war of the future?
Oh, okay. So war of the future, I think we can go on for hours, but I will restrict to some 2-3 comments. So I equate the changes in the warfare to the cricket. So you must be wondering, what does cricket got to do with the warfare?
Correct.
Well, if you see in the cricket, we had test matches, 5 days. Then came one-day international, ODIs. Then came T20, 2020. War, the same thing is happening. We had world wars. Then we had major wars between 2 or 3 more countries. Now it is skirmishes, short. So what I'm getting at is the warfare is becoming short, swift, and intense.
Okay.
3 things. Okay. Short because nobody wants to fight for a long time. The effects are too long. The Ukraine thing, your classic example is, I think, miscalculation by Russians that it will be easy walkover, but it will drag down for long. And more it is dragging, the more destruction it is causing. Swift and intense because the intensity of the warfare is very, very high. Okay. Second, we have already talked about it is becoming multi-domain. Instead of 3 domains, now there are 7 odd domains. And the next aspect is that earlier it is not only the military part. Now the warfare is changing in such a way that it's a whole of government approach. It's not, and it's on the paradigm of all the national power elements. That is DIME paradigm, they call it, in terms of military, in terms of economy, in terms of information. So every this thing. Okay. Then, as I said earlier, the difference between the peace and the war is getting blurred. Okay, another interesting thing which I didn't cover earlier is the whole warfare is going towards no contact warfare.
Okay.
I mentioned the long range vectors and unmanned platforms. Most of the countries are developing that because they're getting averse to mainly body bags coming back. That's what it comes to. Because the morale suffers. So you create body bags on the other side by long range vectors and unmanned platforms. So that is what is happening to the warfare. And technology intensive, of course, technology is coming into the warfare in a big way. Airforce, as I said, most, the Navy and Army also. Technology is coming in. So these are the changes which are taking place in the future, warfare in the future.
Wonderful. Wow, what a conversation. On that note, Marshal Khosla, thank you so much for speaking to me. I love the way when I asked you what Pakistan, you just called them an irritant. I think that says it all about Pakistan. I was also fascinated to learn that you're doing a PhD in China, and I made a mental note that someday I'll do a conversation with you only on China.
Yeah,
that's a country that I have spent a lot of time in, and I would love to get your perspective. But thank you for talking to me about your journey, about your leadership style, about how technology is changing the defense services, about the impact of we have on our borders with China and Pakistan. And thank you again for sharing with me your deep thoughts on what is happening in our world. Thank you again and good luck.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.